All right, we continue now with a presentation from Louis DeJoy, the Postmaster General and CEO of the United States Postal Service. This will be followed by a fireside chat minus the fire. Please, well, that's up to Louis. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Louis DeJoy.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you. It's an exciting time to work at and be at the United States Postal Service. I am fascinated about what the Postal Service can become and the journey we are taking to transform it. I am fascinated about how the Postal Service is business model and how it strives to serve the American people and American businesses throughout the nation, no matter where you live or who you are. And I'm fascinated about the work we are doing to improve that service. I am fascinated by our role in national communications and the nation's commerce and how we are repositioning ourselves for growth with new products and services. I am fascinated by our role as critical infrastructure and our response to the nation's needs in times of crisis and how we are repositioning ourselves to expand that role for the future. I am fascinated by our infrastructure spread throughout the nation and its territories with over 31,000 retail centers, 19,000 delivery units, 400 processing plants, and 250,000 vehicles, and the investments we are making to modernize. I am fascinated by our daily activity, delivering and collecting hundreds of millions of pieces of mail and packages, with 300,000 carrier routes, visiting 165 million delivery points 6 days a week, from tribal communities in Alaska to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I am fascinated by our efforts to make our service more reliable, affordable, and available far into the future for your children and their children and their children. And finally, I am fascinated by our 640,000 remarkably capable and dedicated postal employees in every job and every place throughout our organization for their commitment to public service and their efforts to join me, my leadership team, and my board in our fascinations for the Postal Service of today and one far into the future. For the last 2.5 years, under the initiatives outlined in our Delivering for America plan, the United States Postal Service has been undergoing a major transformation, and it is fascinating. The energy, commitment, purpose, and collaboration we are engaging in to put the Postal Service on a path for growth, efficiency, and proficiency in its mission will take the Postal Service from not only being the most trusted organization in America, but also the most used and therefore the most needed organization in America, if our plans succeed and we survive. Yes, that's an odd statement after all that optimism. Well, I've had other emotions besides fascination since I was appointed Postmaster General. Perplexed, sad, angry, all of that comes to mind. When I arrived in June of 2020, the pandemic was not the only crisis the Postal Service faced. The Postal Service was on a course to run out of cash in 60 days. It had excuse me. It had accumulated nearly $100 billion in losses over the last 10 years and was projecting to lose close to $200 billion over the next 10 years. It had a negative $150 billion balance sheet, negative $150 billion balance sheet, and over $25 billion of deferred maintenance on its infrastructure. The Postal Service's revenue sources were dwindling, its costs skyrocketing, its ability to keep people at an all-time low, and its organizational and operational strategies were void and continuing to dig the hole it had been digging for the last 15 years that led to the catastrophic condition. There was and had been for several years a clear and present danger that the Postal Service, as we know it, was about to fail. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Read our financial statements. Read the last 14 annual reports and warnings from the General Accountability Office. Watch some congressional hearings. Not just mine. Watch some previous PMGs. Check out mail volume. Go ask your carrier. This had been going on for 14 years, and everybody in D.C. knew about it. Yet there was no plan in sight to deal with it, no legitimate discussion from within the organization, in Congress, the administration, the Postal Regulatory Commission, or the mailing industry about what to do. There were some ideas, usually self-serving, mostly ridiculous or political, and always short on substance and any ability to accomplish anything. So what's going on? How did this all happen? This is something I needed to know when I walked in the door. First, it's important that you understand what Congress intended when it established the Postal Service with the Postal Reform Act of 1970. This landmark legislation separated the Postal Service from the federal government to make it an independent agency, one that was to self-fund its operations through the sale of its products and services and was to be free of political influence. For the next 35 years, the Postal Service served the American people well, maintained their facilities, invested in technology and automation, bought new vehicles, and was a self-funding enterprise as mail volume kept growing. But then things changed, and the Postal Service and its stakeholders grossly failed to evolve. I put these failures in three basic categories. The first was the impact of innovation on our services, products, and the industries that we serve. We became the victim of a virtue of capitalism, creative destruction. The rapid rise of digital communication dramatically reduced the revenue sources of our monopoly, increased our operating costs, introduced competition that could deliver mail faster than a speeding bullet. Email, it could not be reckoned with. The second category was the Postal Service's institutional memory that formed the basis of its decision-making while it was a bureaucracy operating in a monopoly. The institutional memory failed the Postal Service in its organization and operational initiatives that were required to transition from a high percentage of its revenue being from its mail monopoly to one that needed to compete with formidable competitors in the package delivery and retail business. Over time, organizations learn from their successes and from their mistakes, but rarely do they learn from their inaction or improper reaction. They just get punished. And that is what happened to the Postal Service from about 2006 until my arrival in 2020. These two categories of poison, creative destruction and institutional memory, are not unusual attributes that lead to the failure of successful businesses. Blockbuster, Motorola, Kodak were all great companies with great committed and hardworking people following the historical successful strategies laid out by their leadership. However, when leadership was faced with the disruptive nature of creative destruction, they could not overcome their institutional memory to make the required changes necessary to continue their success. In the face of new opportunities, their products, processes, and rewards continue to be based on past successes, which limited their vision for the future. They kept hard-working people working on the wrong things. But the Postal Service also faced a unique third category of poison. I call it deliberate destruction. It was inflicted by our stakeholders over the 15 years prior to my arrival. Our stakeholders are Congress, the Postal Regulatory Commission, the large mailing industries. These are entities that, along with management, are responsible to ensure that the Postal Service has the ability to serve the American people and be viable, not just to deliver mail tomorrow, but far into the future. And when these stakeholders show a willful indifference to the negative consequences of their actions that are readily evident, I call it deliberate destruction. Our stakeholders, the Congress, our regulator, and the mailing industry all engaged in willful indifference to the destructive impact of the economic changes, the legislative changes, and the political interference had on our funding sources and our cost of operations. Bad legislation in 2006 with the Postal Accountability and Enforcement Act, 15 years of restricted operating regulations, and a defective pricing model from the Postal Regulatory Commission, self-interested political lobbying by the mailing industry, and parochial and extreme rhetoric from our governing officials. All this led to the sad situation when I arrived at the Postal Service. So how do we deal with it? We needed a strategy, a battle cry, at a high enough level to refocus all this energy in the direction that would get us moving and put the organization on a path to long-term success. So I worked with the board and then the team to begin the process to create the Delivering for America plan. But before we got to work, I specified 3 high-level tenets that we must commit to. We must commit to delivering to 165 million addresses 6 days a week. This was a unique service we provided the American people, and it was especially evident during the pandemic. Number two, the second tenet was we had to believe that and commit to covering our cost of performance and create a culture that believed that we needed to cover our cost of performance, that we needed to compete in the industrial complex. The third tenet, and perhaps the most important one, amongst the doom and gloom of the organization's empty hallways, imminent financial collapse, deteriorating service performance, and dysfunctional agenda, I said we must believe and act as if we are a going concern, that we're going to be here for another 250 years, and our responsibility is to have a vision for the future and a strategy that gets us there. We began to make everyone think they were working at a new place, one that needed to compete for its survival to serve the American people. And it's overwhelming the amount of energy we received when we put it that simply. We then set out, and in conjunction with our board, to establish over 100 specific initiatives that identified our actions since the release of the Delivering for America plan. These initiatives focused on our efforts to improve our operational precision, improve our service reliability, reduce our cost of performance, grow our business, create long-term enjoyable career paths for all our employees, and to have a commitment to our strategy and a voice for everything postal. After 2.5 years, we have created tremendous energy, and we have accomplished a lot. There's too much to go through. Read the book. It's out. We publish a report to Congress every year and talks about how our projected losses of $200 billion are down to $70 billion, how we've created new products, how we've driven cost out, how we've stabilized our workforce by converting over 150,000 people to full-time positions, how mail and package service, 98% of the country gets the mail and packages within 3 days across the nation. And last year, in our package revenue, while most of our competition were down 6, 7, 8%, we hovered about break-even, minus 1%, and are already up 7 or 8% this year with our new products and services. So with that, I'll leave you what we have many different things we're working on in terms of organizational strategies, operational strategies, marketing strategies, environmental strategies. We'll be announcing our new environmental plan this December. We're putting out 66,000 electric vehicles and a whole suite of new initiatives that we have to bring. But most important is what is our vision for the future for the Postal Service? We see ourselves as the preferred delivery provider in the nation. We see ourselves with a retail center in easy reach of every community, offering up services that the American people want to buy. We see a modern processing and transportation network. We see technology-enabled carriers. We see postmasters as leaders of commerce in their communities. We see a preferred employer providing a stable and vibrant workplace. We see a proud organization operating with precision. And we see us, as I said, not only as the most trusted organization, but also as the most used, and thereby the most needed in America. Thank you, and I'll look for Michelle.